Hey, what's up? I'm just tapping in with a quick video, and this is a third part, and then I think maybe bring in this most recent series I did about fire, about infatuation and fire, and I'll try not to rehash those statements from those videos, the two previous videos about infatuation and fire, but I will say that the first video in that it led up to and it helped me get warmed up for the actual rendering of the topic. So if anyone had watched, it's not usually it's not a good look to apologize when you weren't asked to apologize or really compelled to apologize. But I didn't mean to make any misleading titles. I when I title these videos on this channel, um, I think as a content creator, you can't help but try to curate the titling of your video so that it'll be appealing and gain traction. Because as people, I recently watched a video that was talking about people getting taken away with wanting traction as like content creators. But I think that content creation is an art form, and it's imminent within art to have an instinct to want to want to be recognized, to share art, because that's what art in it is, communing. It can be communing with oneself, but also others, and that's kind of what's deep about art, is that, like, say I'm singing. So when I'm singing, am I singing to myself or to another person? And does it sound better if I'm singing to myself or another person? I think that there's a sweet, I can't enunciate where that sweet spot lies with that, but I would think that it's somewhere between self and other is a sweet spot in art, but also like creativity. So there, it would be natural for a person who uploads anything original to have an instinct to that they would like to land that with another person, and that's a little bit kind of like the mystery of that's kind of the appeal of being a content creator, is that you actually don't know exactly who you, that's part of probably also being an artist, is that you actually don't know exactly who your audience is. According to Osho, even as you're intimate enough with a person to make love to them and to maybe have a child together, you actually don't know a lot of that person for the whole time you're knowing them, and after you're knowing them, before, during, and after you're knowing someone, you're not knowing the entire scope of that person, because there's just things about another person that baffles you because it's beyond you. So like my parents are they're still in each other's life at after 40 years of between like maybe 40 to 41 to 42 years of knowing each other, or getting ready to about know each other. And there's still things about each other's experience. Wait, what you did? They did what? Said like that there's pieces about each other's story that they don't know, even as they've been together this long and they've had our family together. But a lot of, like, that's also true of an audience, is that you don't actually know people. I had a friend, one of my real friends in this life, from New Mexico, that I grew up with, and he kept up with me a lot as a young man, as a very young man. I wasn't a popular person as a young adult. I had traction in my community just by being like, I was known. I've been known in life. In most of my life, I've been known because I would have different things, interests that put me in public. And then I may have had a background that I comport myself differently, but I wouldn't be popular like that. And then so when I was a young man, I wouldn't be popular. But my friend, he had become a musician. We made each other good at basketball when we were young, but then he got into music in high school. I also was, but not as much of instrumental. And he was a jazz player, and he was having real traction and popularity, and in an actual real gig. He was getting gig work barely out of high school, and but he would still and he went to university straight out of high school, but he would still get up with me, like, on he had nothing to gain of clout, or like to smooch off of me for nothing, but was just actually genuinely interested in me as a person, but also interested in checking up on me and giving me something of company, when I wasn't seeking friendship and company at that time. But yeah, I still needed it because I was a human being, and he would be dope enough to do stuff like that. But one time he said, because he's the type of person, we grew up together. We knew a lot of the same people growing up, and like a lot of the people that I would really have a crush on in life, like growing up as kids, he would know what they're like around me and not around me, both when we are little and like getting to be like young adults, he would see a different side of people. I would see a different side of people like as they would like say things about him when we were kids, but he more so knew more of the people we grew up with afterwards, and also like the beautiful of which. But he would say you'll never as you're knowing someone, there's a side of people that you will not know. As much as you are familiar with the person or think yourself infatuated familiar, there's a part of person of the larger part that you do not know and cannot know. I can't. He said that's what he said in my. That's how I paraphrase it. He said, you will never know what another person really thinks about you. He said that. That was a cool thing. But it's such like that also with like with content is that you don't know your audience, their tastes, what can fly. Like I think my father said that one of the great aspects of comedians is that they exactly press the envelope. So a comedian says the type of thing like damn, did that fool just say that? But it's actually hilarious and it's actually redeeming and enlightening. Like I had another friend like that in high school. He became he was something of a ladies man and lady killer when we were young adults because some of his propensities and his giftedness like in terms of humor and personality, it blossomed as a young man, but also so did his appearance. He became handsome. But he had this girlfriend. One thing that was really great about him is that he would date women from any background, very different background than him. He was first generation African American as I am, and he comes from the same people as I come from in Africa. But he would date women who were first generation Asian American, like adopted from Korea or like in the Twin Cities. Like we grew up. There's a large Hmong representation in the Twin Cities. I think California also, but also the Twin Cities, and that has to do with the deeper history around the conflict in Vietnam. Where I won't go into that part, but there's a deeper history about the conflict in Vietnam and the Hmong people and how they would be in the United States, but specifically California and Minnesota. And a lot of them they were really cool growing up. They're some of they were people that they're people of respect. The Hmong people, they would always show other people respect, and they were to be respected both academically, socially, sports, anything. Um, but he would date like he had a girlfriend that was like Korean and then Hmong, and then he had girlfriends that were like white American. He had some of my girlfriends, but all I meant to say is that um, and then he would soon date women who were African American, American African. He just liked life like that. But he would also get like his girlfriend from Korea. He would give her a hard time like in like calling her a communist and but he was joking like that, but it was hilarious because he was pressing the envelope of humor. Like, can you really actually just call someone a communist like that because they're from Korea? But it was endearing and humorous and enlightening because he was mocking communism and capitalism at the same time to call her a communist like that while he's like her friend like that. But that's like a lot of what comedy is that it's actually it's releasing tension that like the you're like a lot of people you have thoughts that you're proud of, you have thoughts that you're less proud of, you have reflexes coming from a society with a history like ours. You have reflexes just based off the statements and attitudes that you've grown up around. But then you see something creative or artistic or humorous that or self-deprecating that exactly speaks to, sheds light on, and makes a mockery of our own attitudes and dispositions and differences, such as to overcome them, reach them, and be more human like that. That's real redeeming and enlightening humor. And in other videos on this channel, I've called that particular friend of mine enlightening for his humor. That was very enlightening what he would do like that. But then I made certain statements to him in the past, like the type of statements I would make on this channel, where he actually, there's one moment I referenced before. We were in a computer lab at a state school when he had matriculated, but I had not. And I made one of these statements that had been on my mind, and he paused for a moment, and he said, "I think you freed my mind." He's like, "Wait, no, I think you just freed my mind." And I've said in this channel that there's a few times in life where people say something that they really mean it to you. They actually mean their words to you in that moment, and that's when that may be the most awesome thing that we can experience, more than a roller coaster, more than prom, more than our first gig. The most awesome thing might actually be that moment when somebody actually um, meant meant what they said to you. And that was one of those for him. But then for me, it was equally profound for me just to hear him say that, to hear to confirm, for him to confirm it, for it to land, and for him to confirm that. So it was equally moving for me when he did that. But just to say that there's different ways of enlightening and sharing and offering artistry. It can be humorous, it can be prose, it can be intellect, it can be visual, it can be anything. But part of it is the the challenge and the experience of not knowing another person's background, them also not knowing yours largely, you daring something, but also that with some form of background that you would have to do that, and then maybe some like discipline and craft, which I think that uploading content is a form of developing craft. Then that land or not land, but you had to take a risk for it to land or not land, and then if it were to land, it's redeeming and rewarding, but it wouldn't be possible to be rewarding without the risk of it not landing. So even things like humor, that's actually a pretty high degree of risk if you attempt humor. Like my friend that did that, he would he would attempt a lot of humor in life. Some of his some once seldom a lot, like more so for me because I would spend a lot of time with him. He would say things that actually really make a ham of himself and it not go over well. But as much as him will make a ham of himself and be obnoxious, frankly, for a friend, when it did click, it was brilliant and redeeming, and it was the type of thing to make life worth living. But he was also he was comfortable with conflict, so he was assertive in life. He was assertive enough to be himself. That the humor was actually more so part of him being himself than for him to like entertain people, and that's one of that was a real unique giftedness that he had, but it had a dark and a light side. I actually spoke to to someone that was our mutual friend as an adult, and they couldn't get past his humor, but then also like some of the conflict that they had, that those two had. And I was saying that that might actually be just the fact that that there's a dark and light to all things. So for someone that's that much of enlightening and humorous and redeeming, there's a dark side to that too. But and it's also the same with like attempting humor in public, is that it can land, it can go over well, and you get better the more you try it and let it go over well. But also it can crash and burn sometimes. But you need that too to know where the actual real line falls, and you're playing exactly at that line as humor goes. But very similar with this content of like attempting original statements, but that are also touching upon human topics that are open to interpretation and have real cost by it. I was talking to my father this weekend, and he was saying that there's a man, I can't think of this man's name. He was a revolutionary that inspired my father when my father was socially and politically active as a young man. And he was saying that this man, all his statement was I'm gonna put his name in the thumbnail in the description when I can think of it, because I'll have to quote this. But he said um, don't lie and don't claim easy victories. And so my father, at one time, my father was once interrogated in Southern Africa for some of his organization in high school, and he was interrogated by the type of people that would be disappearing people at that time. So it was they were doing a manhunt for him at some level, and he was able to evade them. But at one point they caught up with him, and when he was being interrogated, he was just thinking of that particular man that I'm referencing. That revolutionary man's also from Africa, the same region as my father, and I think he would have been actually active at the same time as my father would have been, but I don't think they were associates. But he said, don't lie and don't claim easy victories. And to my father, that don't lie part means part of like what I'm saying in this channel is that there may be nothing as impressive as when somebody means what they say to you. But you can't actually have that kind of congruence in your statements unless you're true in life and by and large not falsifying or making false statements or lying, to have that type of congruence and rapport to do that. But then also like the part about easy victories, my father would say is that like when you're talking about like different atrocities or historical incidents that you did not partake of, or that you did partake of, but you're not giving credit to how arduous it was, that's claiming easy victories. And so my father said that's not something to do right there. So I don't mean to do that on this channel with the type of stuff I talk about. But I think that if you're speaking, the only thing that would make a person competent and or worthy to reference real human suffering, real sacrifice, real loss, real cost would be something that's in serving the interest of truth, or maybe I guess art too, because like if something is artful, that's a value in itself, and that's redeeming enough to be worthy to reference different things if it's art. But then also I'd say truth might be like that too. Art might be the creative part, truth might be fact and or creative. Art might be truth and or creative, but it's just that but what I wanted to say is that um I I wanted to I didn't so as a content creator, there's a challenge and also a mystery about the audience, and it's captivating. So you're wanting traction with your content because it's original, and it's like confirmation. But like I don't mean to be heinous with this, but like a lot of people that like say um, different things that people do, it's not the same if it's not confirmed, because like I had a the person who trained me. So I've known different service members in my life. Like I've known different service members, and uh, I've known of service members that have been involved in violence, and the ones that I knew in person that were having that actually could appreciate the impact of what they were doing and what was being done to them in violence. They would have like a they'd have one sensation of that, and then and I'm not saying there's nothing cool about that, but I'm just saying that that's one sensation they would have. But then I had a person that trained me as a school bus driver, and his son had been involved in the type of stuff that those men were involved in. But he was saying that like sometimes they would pull up somewhere like to begin to make a like a landing zone or a base, or like a garrison of some kind, just some kind of secure premise for operations of military activity. But to do so, they'd have to do fighting to do that. But a lot of times they just be firing at, like, they can't actually see what they're firing at, but that they know there are people there, and they expended that much ammunition. They knew they would have had to hurt somebody. But equally can be as I think as haunting and horrifying is to injure indiscriminately but not know what actually is the consequence in the aftermath of what you do, or to injure and know the consequence, but it's a different it's different like that. But there's a dark and a light to all things. So that'd be the opposite of cool. The opposite of life is like that, but it's still significant to a person in their understanding of themselves and their experience to know the impact of what they did, is what I'm saying. But I think it's like that for artistry, music, anything that you would do that impacts other people, but also impacts yourself for impacting other people. There's an instinct to want to know what the traction is. So it's for a content creator, that'd be like what the metrics are, the comments, the sharing, the likes, stuff like that. It's not just as merely that like some people would say that the internet apparatus has been fashioned by people called attention engineers. There's a person named Cal Newport. He was a peer of he was an academic peer, and near he was attending school close by the man that did Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. This Cal Newport was one of his intellectual peers. He was at those Ivy League schools on the East Coast, similar to Mark Zuckerberg, and also becoming a computer scientist and engineer, as social media was initially really taking off in the first 5 years of the first decade of the 2000s. And he was leery about it at that time. He had enough forethought to be leery about the potential ramifications of social media then, and so he abstained from it then, and he even abstained from a lot of digital media to the present day, even though that's his profession to work in that line. and he made statements around like maybe 2015 about some of the fact that the same people engineering like slot machines in gambling cities and stuff like that, they would be the same people commissioned to engineer some of our social media features that make it very addictive like that. Almost as it doesn't have to be very sophisticated to be very potent. If you can imagine like a rat or a gerbil being trained to the dispensation of like food pellets or something like that. Similar like with the the digital reinforcement and gratification, reward and punishment apparatus, and the punishment is very significant too. You could say that the lack of engagement features it functions as a punishment, but also like say people play video games which are also very addictive. They're electronic and very addictive. There's a punishing feature of the video games in that you can't get past a certain level or you can't get past a certain you have to do some video games will actually make you pay to get different implements, accoutrements. I think in another video I was talking about like the type of things that a soldier or a martial person or a person of any particular walk of life would wear and or use. It's like a combination of equipment and garment that's called accoutrement. And I think that some of these video games you have to actually pay outright your own money or your mama's money or somebody's money to purchase the access to accoutrements in the game that would allow you to further access the game. So you're punished by some of the deprivations and limitations to your access of that game, and then you're rewarded by the more engagement that you give that game, which is actually it's kind of it's a little bit dark if you think about it, because the more you're engaging a game in the past, it would have been more dark because the more you're engaging a game like that, the more and more you're engaging it, the less and less you're actually getting back tangible for what you're investing into a video game like that. So a lot of times, like in the past, there'd be different attitudes about like dating online in the past, like different what's the word for it, stigma about date online dating there was in the past, and there was also stigma about video games in the past. But if anything, those are part of the people that would have been winning then and now is the people that would have been savvy around online dating and video games. But I think now you can actually get real compensation for what you would develop of yourself in video games, like whether just socially, like people, it's more social now. People engage, and not that it wasn't social in the past, but it's more rewarding now. I think video games is so that's a real lane for people in a channel. But I just wanted to point out that it can also be very compelling, and it can in the past there would have been maybe a little bit less to come back from it because I at different times in my life I was a video game player before becoming an adult. I would play like 007. I was pretty good around 007, Mario Kart, and Grand Theft Auto. Those were the main games that I ever really engaged with a lot. Before that, back in the day, I would play Dinosaurs for Hire, but you got to be an OG to know what the hell Dinosaurs for Hire is on Sega. That was a cold ass game. That was a colder game, pound for pound, than 007 and Grand Theft Auto. I'll be one to say that Dinosaurs for Hire because there's these little dinosaurs and they would have these machine guns, and you did nothing but go up against other machine guns and other dinosaurs with these dinosaurs with machine guns. But it shot like these little like lava balls, and they had like these cool maneuvers. Like there weren't too many maneuvers, but you could jump, you could lay down flat, you could crouch, you could sprint, stuff like that. Real actual footwork maneuver, and you could get over on a position on a motherfucker like that. Dinosaurs for Hire would be like that back in the day, or then there was Mortal Kombat on Sega, and my friends would play that more. But I just bumped there at my friend's house. I could listen to all that hardcore hip hop that I couldn't at home, so I just be like bumping all the real hip hop of the '90s as it was coming out, while my friends would be playing Mortal Kombat. But they were more sturdy around that game, and they would get over on me with that game. But but then like the social media is like that, and then also so is the content creation. But there's the difference is that in the social media space, the engagement and the deprivation, it's psychologically visceral. Like you can feel if you're getting traction online or not. But there's actually real consequences and ramifications because you say the right wrong thing and there can be hell to pay, or you say the right wrong thing and there can be the good kind of hell to get paid or to pay, however you want to look at that. But so the online activity, it can materialize into real reality, real outcomes of reality. that can be as more beautiful than beautiful and more heinous than heinous, um, such that it's not false, but it would seem arbitrary based on the fact that it's just like what are you really compensated by traction or not traction. But that Cal Newport, he inspired me to stay off of social media, so I relinquished social media like 2015, and I haven't engaged in social media other than more so viewing YouTube and then beginning to post in the last couple of years. Um, but I just wanted to say but it's still part of the mystery and the appeal and the challenge of being a artist or a content creator. I think the word intellect, like people don't always know what they're reaching for when they say intellectual. Like they would think it means like pretentious, or like they might not know exactly what they're referring to with intellectual. But I think intellectual would be like an artist as ideas go. That can play into maybe any form of art would actually be intellectual because it's conveying ideas, even if that be feeling and sensation or something, but it's still a form of ideas, ideating, whether it's like a fact or like an aesthetic in a feeling. But it's intellectual. So you could say I'll be one to maybe say intellectual is synonymous with artist, but it doesn't have the same pull or the same ring as artist does. But intellectual, and also like a lot of people, they'll mock you for wanting to be an intellectual, but if you really actually got on traction and were respected as an intellectual, that would be probably a heavy form of real traction and respect if you were respected as an original thinker. But part of like I think that a lot of things that people get really good at, it would be for one of two reasons. It'd be one is that there's something compelling about it that it's like damn it, I gotta get that. Wait, I gotta no because I can do it like this. Wait, but I could do it better like that, and then like that. Nah, but damn it, I just gotta see. And that's how you start to get good at something. But then, I think what's most addictive in life is a sensation of mastery, of actually like maybe a dark combination. Like I think like the most addictive things, like if you wanted to get somebody like addicted, like worse than crack. I don't mean to be light about that because that's horrible stuff to experience. But I think like the right combination of a mystery addictive substance would be like you combine salt and sweet somehow. That distinction, the bit or bittersweet, some kind of contrast, a combination is very potent. But then also, what's potent for people is a combination of challenge and facility or accomplishment or competence. Competence and challenge. You mix that together, but you get better at it, but then also you touch something. So I think that people are addicted to cigarettes because of touching the pack of cigarettes and also becoming proficient and habituated to touching it as much as taking the pulls because you're good at it now. So it's hard to let go. So you look at people that smoke, they smoke a lot. They look good at it. They look that might be what has been a form of enticing people to become smokers is because when you see someone smoking, there's something of a master because they do it all the time like that. But if you did anything as much as people smoke or the way that people smoke, you would be really, I think you'd be proficient at it, and you would also be addicted to it. And if it's something that allows you to express yourself, or to if it's something that serves you and or others, that might be really cool to be something like that. But that's a lot like of the appeal and the challenge of an artist slash intellectual slash human being in different iterations and the present is that combination of the challenge, but also the challenge of reaching to an audience or a person that's different than you, the risk and also the reward that comes with that. But then in the digital space, we see that in terms of numbers, but it's deeper than the numbers, but it's not independent of the numbers. Um, but what I wanted to say is that so what I meant to say is that I think that when they talk about people going off onto the dark side as content creators, where you start to become manipulative or incongruent in your statements or what you offer because of the impetus and the pull and the sensation of traction or the lack thereof, where exactly did that start at when it goes off the rails? I think that for me personally, it would be somewhere around the titling of messages of videos, because when you title a video, I think it does make it's not independent of the content, but it makes quite a bit of it seems to make a difference in the traction. I don't know if that's from what's promoted of it or what's actually interesting about it, but that's where you could start to be like a little bit crafty. So I've changed the names of my titles a lot and the name of my channel a lot. And if I'm being honest, it's probably from that of the addictive part of curating a message like that. But it can go exactly off the rails like that and become something different. But but what I want to say is that to this point, even as I've titled different videos, I haven't went so far as to falsify a title, as to make a title seem as though it were about something different than it actually is, just so someone would click on it. I haven't gone to that level. That might actually be the difference there. You can become compelled in it. Like to this point, I'm coming up just shy of 700 videos right now as I speak. This is September. So I've been uploading content onto YouTube for less than a year, because I started like in December of last year, and so this is now almost 700. It'll likely be over 700 titles at the current. If I remain inspired, it'll be likely over 700 videos by within 1 year. And a lot of those videos are at length. It's like original music content or original ideas, ideation, and and some of them are for 10, 20, 50, an hour and a half. A couple of them up to 2, 3, and 4 hours. And I didn't set out as a metric of making that amount of video data or content, but it's just the challenge of it, and then a little bit of the deprivation and the seldom reinforcement that make a person keep going like that. But then also I recognize that it creates, it's a form of craft and skill set, because I think if you look at the first videos on this channel, I would present myself differently online, verbally, and I've had different experiences in life, because your experiences somehow go around what you say. That's why you have to be mindful of what you say, because as you speak, you're influencing other people consciously and subconsciously and unconsciously, and yourself equally, if not more. So the things that you say, they can become real in your life. And so I've had the last year for me has been different probably than a lot of other years. Not only because of content creation, but also not so it's not caused by the content creation, but it's not uncorrelated to the content creation. And I don't mean to make light of that, but then also I think that there's some development in the like the articulation, and in I think that the word is actually oratory. That's a heavy word. That's not a word that probably someone should take upon themselves, because it doesn't sound strong when you refer to yourself as certain things. And oratory is one of them, but it's technically oratory when you're given extemporaneous, spontaneous dialogue and or discourse and or fact and or history and or inspiration, and or insight, or something to provide insight into a person's environment, even if that be their creative approach or their creative outlook and confidence. But but I don't mean to play with that word oratory, but it's actually developing a form of oratory. But you can't be proficient at anything without practicing it. But then also it's a little bit more real, and it engages a different part of your mind when you know that you're publishing it, and you're held, that you shall be held to a standard to make public statements. Then that changes that changes the stakes. But then it helps with the skill set. So some skills, they're also a function of the environment where they're being developed. So I think that oratory can be developed in the digital space. That's an actual suitable means, a viable means to develop oratory, independent of like academic or religious or social or political oversight that could be limiting in other times. Not that it's completely free of that on the digital space, but it's unique in the digital space in the human experience, I think, to this point. But then I think the same would be like practicing an instrument. So I often practice publicly, and I might be something of some people might appreciate that or not, or think that that's a strong suit or not. But I know that I've gotten certain it's helped me to develop a sensation of feeling like a musician, which is part of being a musician. But then also it helps with the skill set, where when you're in public now, it's a different standard that you're held to, but that will bring forth some skills. Or like I've said that I've been a school bus driver in the past, and your first time having pupils on your hands in a vehicle that will bring out propensities in you as a professional, as a driver, as a human being, as an adult, as a man, as a woman, as a person. You can't help but to develop propensities that are latent within you, despite yourself, despite your tendencies and habits, when you have that much of responsibility on your hands. Um, so um, but it's similar like with content creation, because you have your own your livelihood, your life, your reputation, your appeal. You have all that on the line when you present yourself publicly, even on the digital space. But it also helps with it helps give the right suitable environment to bring forth some of the skills like oratory, next to the challenge and the the um the the precipitous nature of it. But so that said, I just wanted to land this one is that I was doing the thing about fire, the thing, and so I never, so at this point, as much as I may have been engrossed with being a content creator or like changed titling, I haven't more so changed the statements or the messages to impress an audience, and also haven't falsified a title. I think the moment you would do one of those, that might be the actual beginning of the end, or the point of no return, is to intentionally make a misleading title and or statement that's not congruent with who you are or what you really think and feel, or what you've actually rendered in something that you're titling. But that video, this series about fire and infatuation, that first video where I was appearing in the vehicle, I was intending to segue from that conversation into the discussion about fire, but I got to my destination, and it's not good to go to be sitting in a car vlogging in the middle of the night anywhere, anyhow. And I had already done so for a few minutes, so I cut that one out. But it does lead into, and it did warm me up for the next video that I rendered a few minutes later, that actually does talk about fire and infatuation. But I just wanted to put that as a brief disclaimer and nuance to the channel, but also to this particular 3-part series, is that I don't intend to make any misleading titles for the sake of traction, that are not referencing the actual content in a video. But I had just a couple thoughts that I wanted to bring in about the thing about fire. Is that I read a book, and where I was going with that is that I read a book about songwriting by Paul Zalo. I mentioned in here that I've been on first name basis with Rob Seals of the Songwriting School, and the actual something of friends, because he was the first person to pick up the phone when I called that school about almost like 7 years ago. And then he was one of the he was just it stood out to me how down to earth he was when he talked on the phone like that. Like one of the real genuine experiences I've had in my life, if I had to count on two hands, that just the tenor and the tone of that conversation, because he knew exactly who I'd have to be calling up that school. He that wasn't the first upstart creative leaning aspiring person that he would come in contact with from humble means and station and background. And then him being as eminent and accomplished and landed as he was is exactly in gifted and engendered to benefit people like that. But then he's also equally as thoroughgoing and no nonsense to be well connected. So he himself is on first name basis with this man Paul Zalo, and I think Paul Zalo has done courses at his songwriting school in Los Angeles, the school owned by Rob Seals. And Paul Zalo had a book. He was part of Song Talk magazine. Um, uh, um, uh, I think he was a songwriter magazine. I think it's called Song Talk, like in the 90s at least. But he was interviewing your rock and rollers from the whole 20th century, like your real blues players, the people that wrote stuff like the Beach Boys, like Brian Wilson, the people that wrote Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, um, it just let it snow. It had actually been written on a beach. I think someone actually wrote that song, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, was written from sunny California. And it was, if you read the backstory, it exactly makes sense how they transitioned to and thought of snow while writing it from California. It makes sense why they would write it from a beach and not necessarily initially intended to be a Christmas song, but then how it could actually exactly work as a Christmas song. So Paul Zala would interview that caliber of people from the 20th century, and then these were that was for the digital space. So their manuscript, and it's in dialogue form in a tome. That means like a very large book. It's like a tome, volume one and two. Two might actually be bigger than volume one. It's called On Songwriting by Paul Zalo, I think. And in one of those, he was talking about he had people in there uh um certain names will come up when you're really having a conversation about rock and roll. And Woody Guthrie is one of those names. Bob Dylan is one of those names, and some of them feature in that book also. But he was talking about there's one of these songwriters. I'm not sure which one he was from, but this songwriter, he was from the era of like the doo-wop love songs and stuff like that that segued into like a lot of our. I'm not saying our music came from doo-wop, but doo-wop attended the progression of music, and there's a really beautiful trove of an era of doo-wop that exists on YouTube. You can find where there's an actual movement of young people, men and women, together, groups of men and co-ed groups that would sing love songs in unison, in harmony, in collaboration about the same love interest, and it's very beautiful like that. But he was one of these people that was saying, I'm not sure if he was referencing doo but he's saying that really a love song is a self-love song. When you're saying about how much you love someone, you're really saying how much you love yourself, because it's not so much that person in themselves. Because if it was that person in themselves, you'd be as much in love with them if they were doing their own thing, have nothing to do with you, don't even like you. You'd be as much if it was all about them. But it's actually from in ordinary terms, infatuation would be more like what that person makes you feel about you, or how your sensation of yourself around them, or your sensation of 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 yourself sensing them is what is infatuating. But I'm not saying that love's not real, but I'm just saying that there's a little bit more of self in infatuation and maybe even love than we would normally think. That doesn't have to be negative in terms of love, because that's actually what realist love is. It was when you realize that we're distinct in this life, yet we're also one. That's real. That's real peace, prosperity, happiness, ecstasy. Um, the bitterness of that, and the redemption in that we had been one player this whole time in this crazy game. Um, and so from that standpoint, we can't pass judgment on one another, and we can be compassionate for one another, because we're really not better than one another, because we are one another. And anything heinous we would do to each other is whack, because it'd be whack to do that to yourself, or have that done to yourself by yourself. Um, but uh, but so a lot of songs are really self love songs, but that can be on a spiritual level. That's beautiful. Love another as oneself, to see oneself in another, and another in oneself. That's not. It takes a lot of seasoning to get to that point. But then in the more intoxicating version of that, the it would be like infatuation. Well, I'm not saying infatuation is not worthwhile or as beautiful as love, but it's I think people look at infatuation differently than love. And infatuation, it contains a little bit of a trace or a smack or residue of oneself more than one would think. Um, but then I think that a lot of we are something of fire in this life, and that a lot of things, all things have the potential to go up in flames. According to Arthur Avon, you have three. I'm not sure if it's pronounced hunas or gunas, like Gunas. They're the propensity for self-interest, um, motility, motion, and big-heartedness, bigness. Those three factors are at play in stabilizing any iteration of experience, be it an environment or animal or living beings within an environment, and both. There's always that play of those three gunas: self-interest, bigness, and motion, ceaseless motion. The ceaseless motion is fire. That I think that might be synonymous with fire, ceaseless motion. It doesn't matter who wins or loses, but it matters that things keep going like that. That's fire. Then within the fire, there's you have the demands of fire. Fire is very demanding, completely demanding. There's no ifs ands or buts about fire. Fire is go now. fire. Within that, you can either have self-interest or be big about it. That, and you maybe not be able to be entirely one without the other. You'd have to be a little bit, because like, how may you benefit other people without being self-interested enough to be competent and sturdy and healthy and have enough means, wherewithal to benefit other people? I think the author, the man, there's a man who trained Michael Jordan behind the scenes during some of the great Bulls era. His name was dang, I can't think of his name. He has a book about Relentless and On Winning. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he was saying that some of your people, like say your billionaires, people that benefit other people, like in charity, organized philanthropy, real no nonsense philanthropy. It took a high degree of self interest for them to get to the point of philanthropy. So they're actually a perfect case in point of this existence. You have ceaseless motion, the demands of bills and livelihood and being an adult that are upon all of us, including these very wealthy people. Then you also have labor within that. There's a the labor must go on. It's now Monday morning school. It's now 6 a.m., 7 a.m. on a school on a Monday. All people have to get up and do something, or they have to be um, put away somewhere by the what's afforded to them by people that get up, that would have somewhere to be on a Monday. That including small children have to get up and go to school, preschool, daycare, whatever they have to do for themselves, or that they have to be so that their parents can be where they have to be. So things have to move like that. That's about as real as serious as fire at that point. But then within that, you have the self-interest that would allow them to be maybe efficient in that, and then have like a surplus, and then get all the way on to philanthropy for these very landed people. So that you have the self-interest, the motion, and then the bigness that they have. Um, but such as that, within all that, all things, I'm extrapolating that all things have the potential to be that big, to be ugly, and to be fire. Um, and so, is fire good or bad? It would probably be how it would be conditional. If is fire good or bad, it is completely conditional, because if you're stranded on a highway in the desert and someone affords you a lift out of nowhere, out of a bad situation, the fire in the engine redemption is better than water, because it can bring you to water, which you wouldn't have had water there. But even if it were raining, you wouldn't have enough to drink if you're stranded somewhere. So the fire can be better than water in that standpoint. I'm not gonna make I'm not gonna imagine a circumstance where fire wouldn't be worth serving a person, but it could be as equally heinous a person could imagine as it taking someone out of a desert in a like with a engine. Um, but um, but so fire in itself is not good or bad, but it can be better than good and worse than bad. But so from that standpoint, all things are late at essence, big, ugly, and fire. And so when but that those conditions, those dynamics, propensities, they give the conditions for things to be stable or for things to go up in flames. And there's an actual purpose for things to go up in flames, because like I referenced that I had a family member that lived in the northern part, or that worked in the boundary waters as a tour guide, and he would also help fight fires, because the boundary waters, it often goes up in flames, very similar to California. But there's a function in nature of that, because there's a purpose for the fire in nature, because it shifts things, it revitalizes things. And I've made other statements on this channel going back. I did a group a series about intergroup dynamics, where I conflict in dynamics, where I was attired in pink, and I was exactly in my mind referencing fire when I was saying that there's something of vitality that comes from trauma to an environment and to members of an environment, that's actually rejuvenating and enlightening and redemptive and necessary and indispensable, as tragic and unfortunate and frightening and terrifying as fire is, and as conflict and violence is. It's still a part of what makes reality viable, and such is also fire. But that fires can the way that fire is actually managed in nature, because you can imagine you would have had infernos in nature before we had firefighting equipment and technology. Those infernos would have they would have come into manifestation, existed and ceased to be manifest according to the dynamics and rigors and opportunities and deprivations of nature. But another way to say that would be those dynamics of bigness, ugliness, and ceaseless motion. It actually it makes the conditions for there to be or not be fire. But at essence, all things have the potential to be fire because they are yet fire. According to Arthur Avalon, is that wood that's stable is as much of fire as it is when it's ignited, but it's just in a different state. So the deeper thing I wanted to say with this is that, but then what is fire though? Because a lot of people, so how, I'll just be want to ask someone like in this video, what then is fire? Because it is fire physical now, because you can see fire, right? But when you see fire, you can't touch fire. You can be touched by fire, but you can't actually touch fire because it's not tangible, or is it? I think that that might actually be a case in point for what we call great and omnipotent and unspeakable in this life. Very close to similar to fire. Because, for example, I'm the type of person where when I get into I will draw conflict and contempt anywhere I present myself, but more so and especially anywhere that I would present my thoughts, more so statements. Anywhere I would make a statement somewhere is an opportunity for a person to seize upon me, and that likely imminently happens anywhere I go in life, up to including small talk in a cafe, banter in a cafe, banter at large in public, banter with family, statements online, scholarship in school, statements in school. I get that imminently and near about instantly. For example, this weekend. I was at a I went to a I went to a place that sells ice cream, and because I went to a place that sells ice cream because I've been working very hard. I've been doing deliveries on a bicycle for I've been doing deliveries, food deliveries on a bicycle for a week, like 12 hours a day in high gear for a week. And so at the end of the week, I specifically sat down to eat ice cream. It's a place I had delivered for before, but sometimes your body needs to be treated the same way that your body is actually your mind. And so just like you would every once in a while do something to take your mind off of something, if you sometimes when you see people that really work out hard, right? So you actually have instincts for appetite that I think are better than what you would curate in your mind. Like I used to work with a personal trainer, and they wanted me to log all the things that I ate all day long. It was so obnoxious and cumbersome and counterproductive, but I did it just to be congruent with them. And that was one of the strongest periods of my life, just in terms of the energy that I had based on the exercise and lifestyle I had. That was one of the parts in terms of energy where that was one of the strong points in my life. Sometimes you can look at your life and the energy that you were experiencing, not only what you look like and where you were and what you're doing, but the type of energy that was about you and in your vicinity. And for me, it was strong with this trainer that would have me logging my meals, but it's actually a lot of work to log all your meals, almost as much as like if you can imagine food containers accruing. That's about how much work it is to log all your meals. Because like, damn it, do I log it before I eat or after I eat, or what did I eat again, and how many calories? They have some apps that can scan things and help with it, but it's very cumbersome. But it's a form of discipline, and discipline helps with all things, including diet. But sometimes I think like if you're working out really hard, really hard, and all of a sudden you get a craving for like a banana, I think that that's actually what the best thing for you in that moment would be. What you're craving, the healthy iteration of what you're craving, may be the best thing for you. So sometimes when people work out really hard, like harder than hard, they get strange appetites. Like you might get specifically an appetite for junk food out of nowhere like that. That might actually be a deeper thing where this reality wastes not. And when you're working out that hard, things are different like that, right? So normally, if you're sitting around not exercising, whole milk is heinous, and that can actually make your face look different. In one or two sittings of whole milk can make your face look different like that. However, if you're living a hard enough life where you're working out a lot and you're missing meals, but you're also being vital and active while missing meals, then whole milk might be exactly beneficial for you because that's actually the calories you need, and it might be complementing the actual the amount of exertion you're having with a rare introduction of whole milk, that could actually be almost like a panacea, or the exact appropriate form of nutrition for your needs and your activities at that moment. And I've come to appreciate that with some real people that work out hard. Not that there's anything of shortcuts or anything to be gained from not making quality choices around consumption with exercise. Because I think most people watching this would know that it's nutrition and exercise. You can't dispense with one or the other. It's like you can't get by without having 2 feet. Generally, you can't get by in the best of ways without having the exercise and nutrition. But sometimes I think something like, so if say you're working out, you're working 12 hours a day on a bike in the high gear of that bike, and that bike is not outfitted for your height, so it's a little bit of an awkward it's an awkward angle for your legs, and your legs aren't fully extending like that for 12 hours a day. You're eating maybe one meal a day like that, a decent meal, a full meal, balanced meal, but one meal a day like that. At the end of a week like that, do you think that a cookie, like a just like a night, like a cookie from an actual like cookie store with a scoop of ice cream, do you think that would be the worst thing for you if you actually had that amount of output, or that there could actually be, and you're also not eating a lot of, you're also not eating sugar at that point. So sugar is not the best thing for you, but that doesn't mean that you need no sugar. So would that not be appropriate at the end of that much work, just something like that, just to take your mind off of life for a moment, but also just as something different, but also a rare form of nutrition, even if it would seem like it's not the most healthy thing. So I was in a place that sells cookies, and I was I sometimes I'll frequent there because I used to work there. But I was asking one of the people there, well, can I do, y'all have that thing where it's like cookie and ice cream, right? Oh yeah, yeah, we got that. And then I was asking the brother, like, well, what kind of ice cream do y'all have again? Because I'm not a normal person to patronize anything to do with treats or ice cream except for special occasion or or work. But then another person was there, was like giving me a hard time. I'm not gonna like give energy to what they said, but it wasn't a nice thing that they said as I'm there about to buy something with them, and and I hadn't said anything rude or offensive, but then to take that opportunity of me ask that question to engage me in a way to make me feel less than, that's a lot of what I experience in all of life. But I a little bit diverge with that, but um so I would make statements. Then where's I go with that? Um, I was trying to think of another venue where I was making statements and getting a hard time about it. But what I was more so trying to say is that um, so um, okay. Oh, but I was in another state. I was in a venue, right? So I said on this channel that I appreciate the music media company of Unison Audio, and I like, just because I like their advertising and what they're trying to accomplish with their product. And I've been a patronizer of them. I was rocking with them for most of their launches of different products. But then they also had like a venue for a social media venue for nothing but music producers, people that are connected as producers, but also people who are interested, DIY producers, the type of thing where you could really get some seasoning. But in a lot of these type of forums like that, I've been in ones like that for style, and I was at that time too. A lot of them, they'll be over a platform called School. So School, SKOOL, it has a lot of these niche, nuanced communities, but they can be very, you can have like a mixed multitude of people who have are less renowned, but they're very skilled, or people who are very skilled and very renowned, all right there together. So there's a lot that can be gained, but there's an impetus for engagement, because there's different demands and rigors for things for engagement. Even the moderators and facilitators of these forums, and some of them you progress and you get access to different learning by your level of engagement. And so I was doing that more in the style one, and I'd get a lot of flack there too. But then I did that in the music one, and I just made like one post. I made one post where I said, because I used to do music production in high school. Then I did less of that. I did a little bit of it again in college, like because I was going to school for songwriting with Berklee College of Music, and I'd create tracks on there. And then like, because I had a couple classes where you create original pieces each week. but then uh um then I did I just did the guitar itself after that, and I was wanting to get back into production like within the last year, and I was on this platform school like that where I had paid to attend there, but also I had been rocking with that company for long, and so when I got in there, they were encouraging people to make like an introductory post, but I think it's more worthwhile to offer a question than a statement. So I simply asked the general audience, what would you do if you were this is actually kind of unique. So when I was at that cookie store and I was asking about I'm not trying to make a big deal about this, but it's actually the same tenor of statement. So when I was at the cookie venue, I was asking what all flavors of ice cream do y'all have, and they're like, man, it's something along the lines of, you should know by now, you should know what kind of flavors we have, fool, like that. But then I was on that online venue, and then I was like, so if anyone here was wanting to become a producer again from nothing, like how would you build yourself, knowing about what you know now but not actually knowing what you know now, how would you go about that to recreate yourself, reinvent yourself for the first time as a producer, but not spiritually being your first time, but literally being your first time. How would you go about that? And like a couple of them said some cool things, but another one was like, man, you just gotta get after it, man. You know that by now, man. You should know that. Uh, but it was very similar. Like you should know better than to ask a question like that. But it was actually a genuine question. The question I had about the ice cream would have been genuine for that. I knew walking in there that I'm asking for smoke, being a grown man around ice cream, because a lot of people they're not trying to see a grown man enjoy themselves for the sake of it. For anything that doesn't have an actual utility, they're not tolerating a grown man around that. And I wasn't. It was late as hell at night, so I'm not trying to be at a cookie store for the sake of being at a cookie store. But I actually did drop in on there like late at night, like just like, what's up with some cookie and ice cream right now? Do it for me, for the sake of it. And I knew what it might be like walking in there, but I still did so. But then um but similarly in the venue, is like you're not worthy to ask what kind of ice cream we have, even though you're you're about to patronize the store. You're not worthy to ask what kind of ice cream is in the store. But then when I was in that venue, a music production venue where I've been rocking with that company, but then also paid to participate in the forum and honoring the forum by offering a question, and engaging the because when you ask a question, that's a form of respect actually. So I was actually showing respect when I asked about what kind of ice cream they had. I wasn't trying to be rude or mock about that, and I was also showing respect when I asked, how would someone go about becoming a producer? What would be what would be your approach to becoming to building yourself as a producer? And then someone would basically be saying that you're not worthy to ask that question, even though you're patronizing. So I was patronizing the cookie venue, and I was patronizing the company, but also the forum. And but my question was not worthy to that person. And then they said something about like they made a reference to make to they said something about like your music. So they're saying that like if you don't make sophisticated music, like they said something about, the same person said, in the first place you should just be practicing and you should already know that by now, but in the second place, um if you're just making like regular music, that's not sophisticated, that's not gonna gain traction. But then I was actually, well, I actually kind of beg to differ, because they say that so I watched, I didn't say this part, but I watched Real Social Dynamics back in the day with like RSD Tyler, and he would say things like, you have different scales and tiers of business, right, and their traction and their profit. You have like something niche, like say like high end sweaters, high end jackets, designer stuff like that. They're expecting a certain kind of clientele. They may make more hand over fist with any particular sale or batch of sales, or maybe even a night at that store. But the actual real money, the real killing, the real kind of money that make you be like, the real buku bonanza profit, it's actually by shaking down the little guy. So like say a city bus, right? I've said that I actually work for the city buses in the Twin Cities, which is they're a case in point for public transportation the country over, because some of their tactics are replicated by municipalities abroad the country, like driving buses down the shoulder in rush hour. That was pioneered in this region according to my training. But but they said that even that revenue is subsidized. It's not entirely dependent on the ridership. A smaller fraction, like less than a quarter of it, comes from the ridership and their fares. But if you had a business like that, like the city bus, if you can imagine how much you would make in fares a day, $1 here, 50. Back in the day, you could get by with 50 cents or 75 cents. It's not a lot more than that now. It might be like $2 even for rush hour. $2 all day long from all the people that got to get somewhere on the bus. That adds up to a lot. Or $2 for all the people that are trying to get something to eat tonight for dinner off the value menu. That's where the real money is at. Is actually at sometimes at the lower level. Less of nutrition, less of sophistication, but more access. Sometimes more pleasant. The junk food can be more pleasant sometimes. Less of nutrition, less of value, but more of accessible. Sometimes more pleasant. That's where the real money is. So like your big. I won't blast any businesses. Your big food chains. Your big what's the word for it? Department stores. Um, your your anything that's like very broad, they got what you need and they got it at the price you need it. They're the ones that are really getting ahead. So I was saying that as music goes, you could do something like I actually do play Spanish guitar, which is that's more technically and sometimes musically sophisticated than other forms of guitar playing. So a lot of people would rock with that. I don't mean to make that arbitrarily. Is that other forms can't be more sophisticated and musically complex, but generally Spanish guitar would be like that. But as far as traction goes and becoming famous and becoming wealthy, you could probably do better if you had something more basic. Like say you had like so you have like YouTube, right? You have the type of statements that I make on here, right? And you got next to 1 to 5 to 10, sometimes 100 or more people, but closer to 1 to 5 to 10 people check out a video. Then you make a video about kittens, this and that. And that's probably cliche at this point to say the kitten thing, but you make a very basic thing, but it's actually pleasant. It might be well done, even better done than something like this, but it's not of a more sophisticated topic or more sophisticated angles. It's or the camera might be angles, but just the topic in the discussion is not more broad or sophisticated than something like I upload here. But you have a billion views, or say you want to be like you're a rapper, you do some form of music that has a niche audience. I think technically rap would be niche audience if you look at the entire viewership of music. That you have an album that goes, you sell 1 million copies, platinum, something like that. But let you have a song that rocks with kids, teenagers, adults, regular people, old people, stuff like that. Like I remember there was a song called like I'm not gonna blast, so I'll blast the song. There's a song called there. Okay, I won't blast the song because that's clout chasing. But there was a song that appeared on the scene around 2012. Some people might know what I'm talking about. If you can imagine, if you're old enough to remember, or you know of a song that would have been popular around the summer of 2012, fall of 2012, that type of clout. Now that person actually went to the same school that I did. That's not the I found that out when I was at the school, but the school that I went to for music online, I think that person had went to in person that made that song that came out around 2012. If anybody knows that song, it's not like a fancy song or like I don't think it's more sophisticated than a lot of stuff, but it broke the internet. It thoroughly broke the internet, that song. So I was telling this person that as that goes, McDonald's. I just made an analogy that McDonald's would probably do better than you would do better if selling Happy Meals than you would 5 course meals with steak and lobster. That's the comment that I made to that person, and then I got some traction with that, and some people were like, "Hey, you're actually damn right about that." But also, make that the company you're referencing, they're more so actually of real estate because they're franchise. They're franchise. That's where I'm going for. Is that the people that get it on like that, they're franchise, and actually they make more money off the rent. So if you want to really have, if you want to be so rich now that somebody start to almost wonder if they should call you lord of something, you're gonna have to get into real estate, as in landlord, as in franchise, as in so they have the winningest, moneyest thing, right? They're selling Happy Meals. They got the places where the kids can play, stuff like that. They got the place. They're the place where you need to be on a weeknight when you need to get. So who do you love more than yourself and your family? Nobody. When you need to get some food, when you need something for yourself and your family right now, as cheap as it can get, but also as good as it can get for you and your family. The right combination of value and satisfaction and bang for your buck, wherever you would be at, and also the other millions, if not near about billions of people around the world that are having that same thought process as you on a weeknight. That place that does it like that, that got it like that, that's bringing in it like that. The real top dog don't care about that stuff. They just care about the simple plot. They care about the name and the plot of land that whoever worked there, whoever run that place, they gotta pay rent for that land, for that franchise. So rent is actually where the real money's at. Where if you got somebody renting something, that's how you kill life. That's how you kill. If you wanted to like take like all these like diabolical, what are we gonna do today, Pinky? We're gonna take over the world. What you need to be talking about is real estate, if that's the case, because it'd be doing something that nefarious by renting. So like Doctor Evil in Austin Powers, if he really wanted to be that diabolical and wicked, he should have just found a way to make everybody rent something. Um, but so what I meant to say is that, but that's similar like fire because if you so what we call of greatness in this life is omnipotent. That is pure potence. That now I think that some people would say that you if you imagine what would that mean omnipotence? The closest thing we can think about that in human terms would be like the almighty dollar. That's the only thing that we call the only thing we allow to be called Lord. People of any creed, any background, they actually don't make too many bones about referring to another human being as landlord. That's interesting. If a person like if a person were to walk outside and then call themselves the great coming of this, the return of this, the this come had just actually came back. A person would if they're generous, they would ignore you. If worse, they may mock you or have you committed somewhere. You make a statement like that, but you can walk up, knock on someone's door in front of their family, whatever their background. Hey, I just want to let you know I'm the landlord. I'm the new landlord. You guys had met. I just wanted to introduce you guys. You had talked to actually while I'm making this video, right? Somebody walked by today. That person is like the lieutenant of the actual landlord. This is where my parents reside. But that landlord had also been over me at another one of their properties, and so was that lieutenant of theirs. But most at that I know the landlord here. I've met her and dealt with her, and she's had favor towards me. Because I think my reputation preceded me with the previous landlord and some of the tenants, where she had favor towards me before she met me. But when I was at another one of her properties where I was renting there, I would be getting to know the neighbors there, and they had not met her. They'd known of her, but they had not actually met her, the actual person that owns the building. But they had met her lieutenant who walked by during this video. The lieutenant is very pretty and savvy, but she's a real lieutenant. But then you can imagine like any one of their tenant there, they could be of any background, any disposition, any politics, any creed. But oh hey, I hadn't met you. I'm the landlord, and my lieutenant was saying that you guys had a question about something. I had heard about it. I really wanted to see about it. Is everything okay? It's okay. Oh yeah. So come to me. This is our family. We just yeah. So it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. We were kind of worried about it because like it was a lot. It was a lot, but it's okay now. And I think that we're gonna be all right. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay, thanks. Just want because I'm like I said I'm the landlord here, so I just wanted to know. I just want to make sure everything's cool and stuff like that. But if there's anything at all, reach out to my lieutenant because she's really on top of things and she should be able to take care of you. All right, nice to meet you. You just another person just referred to themselves as Lord. That's higher than Messiah. Lord is higher than a Messiah. They just call themselves a Lord like that, and no one bats an eye at that. But uh um but so but omnipotence would be the closest thing that we can think of to all. The only thing else that we let rock out like that, like the word Lord, like a person calling themselves Lord, is to also say the Almighty Dollar. Because when people, anyone from like a creed background or just that knows what creeds are about, knows that it would be blaspheme to introduce the word, because the word Almighty, that's almost near about like an affix, like like Mr. Sir, the, like those are affixes to like a title. That the word Almighty is an affix to some of your holy names. And it's synonymous and interchangeable with holy names. Almighty is when I say the Almighty, Almighty. A person knows what I mean and can hear what I mean when I say that. But other people would say that right next to Almighty Dollar. That's actually very egregious if you think about it. Like I'm not saying it's egregious because we have freedom of speech, but on a certain level, that's actually a form of blasphemy because a dollar is a form of a coercion. You can make people do things against their will. The most violent thing you can do to anyone or anything is to compel them in spite of themselves, whether against themselves or another person, or to waste of themselves and of another person. To make a person act against their will is the highest form of violence, and what, according to the Holy Scriptures, the Almighty wouldn't go so far as to make a person, compel a person outside of their will, because the Almighty is the author of free will. So to override free will would be to override their authorship, would be to falsify all their statements. All their power comes from their statements. So there would be nothing, there is nothing of power if there is anything of a transgression of free will, according to the holy text. But and so dollar is even real dollar money is actually that's a form of blasphemy to associate that with what's almighty, because dollar in itself, a dollar par excellence in its purest form is leverage. That's what. So yeah, I got me a little change. You know what I'm saying? I just got me a little change. You know what I'm saying? Just a little something in my pocket. I was working hard, on a bike, but I'm just glad if I got a little something in my pocket. I normally don't talk like that, but what that would mean if I was talking like that is that I have leverage now because I can go buy something, do something, receive something, something like that. But it's leverage. So to associate leverage, that is dollar, right next to freedom, free will, inspiration, divinity, almighty, that's something of a conflict of interest and oxymoron at the same time, and blasphemy at the same time. But most people would exactly rock out with that and not bat an eye at that. So it's blasphemy for a human being to call themselves a lord of something, and wield that over other human beings and be respected for that, because Lord is also another, that's synonymous with with some of your holy names. Lord is, that's another, like that might be like another affix, but for a human being to do that, that's blasphemy. But then also to say Almighty Dollar is like that, and that's blasphemy. But those are two exact exceptions where that takes place. But if you were to, so the closest we might imagine of omnipotence would be the Almighty Dollar. So what would but a lot of people have dollars, but they're not omnipotent. So what would it mean to be omnipotent as dollars goes? That would be pure profit, profit with zero overhead, uh, profit with no expense. That would seem near about pure profit, but I think it wouldn't be, because another word for profit that's also different, but it's interchangeable but somewhat different, is gain. Gain is different than profit, because you can do nothing and profit, but to gain, normally in the true sense, I think gain represents an exchange. Gain is in an exchange. A profit could be stealing, because if you stole something, you profited. But if you stole something, you didn't actually gain, because there's a little bit of a guilt and cognitive dissonance, and there can be repercussions if you had stolen. So if it's stolen, that's still profit, but it's not entirely gain, because gain is all the way good to go in the green. We're out of here with gain. We're not looking back. We're not sorry about nothing. We gained something. But to do that, you actually would have to spend something. You have to spend to gain. You have to invest to have like a skill set or an asset. Somewhere along the line, you have to invest in that. You have to give expense, even if you're holding property entitlement, like in times of feudalism in the past, but we're still something of feudalism. To have holding to something, entitlement to something, even if you inherited it, you would have to give something, because you have to maintain it. So to gain, you have to give something of gain. So what we have as omnipotent, that would be the closest that we could approximate that in human terms, would be the most gainful, would still have to give something. Um, in terms of, I think we could maybe say love would have to give love, but that's still giving something. So there may be no thing as gain without expense. But it would still have to be such that it's still omnipotent, and it's all the way in the green, all the way good to go to say omnipotent. So what would that mean to gain, to be the most gainful, but still have some form of overhead? How may you still have some form of overhead and still be gainful? That would be like your franchisee situation. So everyone is so important, right? You got landlords, you got lieutenants, you got entitled residents, you got people having jobs, you have people not having jobs that are also entitled in different ways. So much of entitlement, but also so much of power, because according to Arthur Avalon, the world can be appreciated in terms of power, and for a person to stand, to be able-bodied and or able-minded, is an expression of power. To sustain that, but also to replicate that and further that and stand on that is power. So life is all about power. According to uh, um, um, see, so life is all about power. Um, um, so according to Arthur Avalon, life is a pot of seething forces, right? So as I'm standing here facing the alley, there can be a truck go by. It's not going fast. I think there was one while I was doing this. A truck goes by. That truck got about at least a few hundred horsepower in it. It's hauling. If you can appreciate how much that truck actually weighs, just to push that truck 1 inch would be nearly insurmountable, even for a healthy adult. It would be nearly insurmountable to budge that truck in neutral of its own of your own initiative. But that truck can go down there at 20 miles an hour like nothing, haul about as much as it weighs up a hill at 80 miles an hour. That's a lot of force, but that's just another truck. So you have that many seething forces, social forces, legal forces. I'm not going to touch on spiritual because I'm not competent on that level, but you have all kinds of forces that make life viable, but it also makes us very inconsequential. But how may you be omnipotent in a sea of seething forces like that? It would be something like the franchisee type of thing, where you got everybody is so important and entitled, but also they're spending so much effort to sustain that attitude, but also that agency that they have. Rather than you get along with them and right next to them and work and outwork them, better to just poach the just take your dues off the top like that, from this one and that 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 one. So you're also not limited by anything physically geographic. So they would say that you're people that are of consequence in this life. They've been called globalists, international transnational globalists. A lot of people hear that word globalist and it doesn't sound favorable to the proletariat, to the working people, but people know that there's a degree of power and opulence and almost a different code of ethics and accountability that attends what's called global. That's specifically because that's an example of that's almost like franchisee. So a globalist would be like a larger scale franchisee of corporations, where you're not limited by geographical region, and you're also not constricted with the overhead of any particular operation in any geographical region. You're as viable to assume and dispense with associating with any particular venue, and such that you're more of potent, more of gain, but less of expense, or less of a commitment. So that might be like what actual power is. It's like that. So I was thinking like in those terms, that might be a lot like fire, because fire does not, you can't say what fire is physically. It doesn't have a physical it doesn't have a physical locus. Fire does, or does it? It has fuel, which is physical. So the fire, it jumps from this tree to that tree to that tree to that tree. The tree burning is physical. That the heat and what that does to the tree, which is physical, gives fire. But fire, what fire may actually be, is a vibration, because temperature itself is vibration. Like from hot to room, from cold, from freezing to room temperature to boiling, are different vibrations of molecules, or atomic and subatomic particles that are constituted as molecules, and also give the dynamics, the constituents, and the properties of any degree of matter, is a function of a material and immaterial as we can appreciate it and experience it, is a function of vibration, that it's attendant and correlated to something of physical reality, but it's not limited by physical reality as fire goes, because fire can jump from this to that, and fire has a physical basis, but it's not limited to one physical basis. Like, so you strike up a match, that initial fire, it is correlated, it's somewhat bound and limited by its source and its mode of fuel being a match. But if that match were to drop, it could as soon jump to anything else that would be flammable. It's still correlated to what's physical about what's flammable, but in itself is not exactly physical. But it stems from what's physical. So it's like a sublimation of what's physical. Anything can sublimate from what it is into fire, and fire can invoke anything to sublimate, but it itself is not limited by what it's invoking. And so from that standpoint, it's a lot like that franchisee thing, and I think that might be what's called what we reach for when we. So I'm saying landlord is a form of blasphemy. Almighty dollar is a form of blasphemy. But but that word Lord, what that refers to, or Almighty, what that refers to, that's not blasphemy, but it may be such that it's pure potence, power. It's the essence of what we are, but it's also something of like drawing, as in franchisee of sources. And so, but it in its essence, what fire would be in its essence is a vibration. That's what fire may actually be, is vibration. It's not immaterial, and it's not only immaterial, and it's not only material. It's something of the transcendence between material and immaterial, but it's exactly vibration, and that actually it may actually overlap with music, because that's also what music is. You cannot perceive visually what music is. You can't in terms of music is attended. Music is invoked by physical instruments, but music in itself is beyond what we would call physical. I'm not saying music is not within physics, but it's broader and more sophisticated and less visible than what we would call physics, a physical corporal reality. Music is, but such is also fire like that. But then also maybe love too, like that. Love might be just like that. So I'm just saying that we love fire. Most things that we're impressed by, infatuated with, somehow or another are a part of or made possible by the contribution of fire. And so, but we're always deeply infatuated with ourselves, which are fire. And so I just wanted to land it there. Peace.